You. In one of the most emotional cases to hit New Orleans juvenile court in a long time, a 13-year-old was sentenced today for shooting and paralyzing a 21-year-old man. But those facts don't begin to capture the tragedy surrounding this case, as investigator Mike Pearlstein explains.
My grandson is in trouble. I don't know what he's going to be able to do for himself.
Charlie Harris was talking about his grandson, Daryl, left paralyzed after being shot during an armed robbery in March.
Every day is difficult. Waking up, going to sleep, just everything.
On the other side of the courtroom was the shooter, 13-year-old Lionel Reynolds. Reynolds had two siblings murdered when he was about 6. Then his mother was killed about 3 years ago. Even while hoping for leniency, his family pleaded for help.
You know, make sure he's evaluated every day and get help and talk about the things that he needs to talk about. That's what he needs.
Judge Candace Bates Anderson sentenced Reynolds to juvenile life, meaning he will be locked up until he's 21. But she modified the sentence, allowing his release at age 17 if he gets a diploma and job skills. The judge was quick to point out that Reynolds' modified juvenile life sentence will run concurrently with 15 other cases he had before her, including riding in a stolen car, burglary, battery, and gun charges.
He has a chance. Right now, Daryl does not.
But one person, the most important person, was at peace.
I'm glad that justice was served. I hope he gets the help he needs, and I'm finally past everything that happened.
Mike Pearlstein, Eyewitness News.
Several of Reynolds' teachers came to court in support of the 13-year-old, but DA Leon Canizero called their statements propaganda, saying, quote, they exalted this defendant because he likes to read while ignoring the fact that he also likes to shoot people, end quote.